Are you finding it impossible to get great Heal Permanent eyeliner? It's the hardest PMU treatment to get right. It's a sensitive area, it takes time, and then the client comes back for the touch-up and there's nothing there. Well, I've helped thousands of artists develop elite PMU skills, but for years I also struggled to get consistent great eyeliner results. But I've discovered a simple 3-part eyeliner recipe that will get you to finish both eyes in just 20 minutes, keep your clients comfortable, and get fantastic retention. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through this recipe, and at the end I'll show you how to put all the ingredients together to get ridiculous results and save you a decade of struggling. But a warning for you, change just one part of this process and it won't work. So let's start with the first ingredient. The eye is a very sensitive area and prone to swelling. Once the eye starts to swell, the skin stretches and the body is literally pushing out all the pigment. So we have about 20 minutes to get in and get out with as little trauma and swelling so that the pigment heals in as much as possible. For that, we're going to need as strong a pigment as possible, and for eyeliner, we're talking carbon. Carbon black is one of the least dense pigment molecules, so when the needle pierces the skin and creates a vacuum, the pigment particles get easily sucked into the skin fast, so implantation is super speedy. If we compare this to particles like iron oxide that are incredibly dense, they take a long time to get sucked into the skin, meaning eyeliner can take ages and the skin can become very traumatized. That leads to bad retention. But we don't just want carbon, we want as much color implanted as fast as possible. So we need high pigment load, blacker than a goth's heart, carbon black pigment. And my favorite to use is the highest pigment load I've found, and that's Skillz Infinity Black. But aren't there drawbacks to using carbon? Yes, huge drawbacks. This low density that makes it easy to implant into the skin also means that the body can easily move the pigment and it can travel where we don't want it in an unsightly process called migration. So to avoid migration, I use 2 factors. The first is that I never accept clients who have very visible blood capillaries in their eyelids, because these will let the low density carbon travel up the lash line through the blood vessels very easily. And the second way is by making sure I stick to the other 2 ingredients of the recipe. So what are they? The needle we use to implant the pigment is crucial in permanent eyeliner. It decides how bold and saturated the line is. And if you don't know which needle does what, here's a quick guide. Liner needles have very densely packed needle groupings. When they're tightly packed together, there's less space between the needles, so the dots they make on the skin have fewer gaps between them, and it makes the colour bolder and the results last years. Shaders, on the other hand, leave lots of gaps between the needles, meaning the colour is less dense. So why would anyone use a shader? Well, they'd use it because the needles are far more spread out, therefore the pressure is spread out, reducing the chance of going too deep. That also reduces the chance of migration. It also makes the treatment more comfortable for the client. So, are we going to use a shader in this recipe? No, and here's why. I want to get the pigment into place and I want it as dark as possible. A 3RL sharp liner needle builds up the colour in a more dense way, saturating faster. And I know what you're thinking. If I'm using a really sharp needle and the heaviest carbon-based pigment I can find, isn't this the perfect storm for going too deep and increasing the risk of migration? Yes, it is, massively. And in heavy or inexperienced hands, this could be a disaster. So the third ingredient of the recipe is what's going to prevent this from happening. So we want to get our strong pigment in fast and bold, but also gently. So how do we do that? With this third ingredient. Not all PMU machines are the same. They all have a mechanism that moves in and out very fast that pushes the needle into the skin. And the distance the mechanism travels is what decides the stroke length. And the longer the stroke length, the harder the needle hits the skin. For example, the skin on the body is much thicker than the skin on the face, so many body tattoo machines will have a 4mm stroke length. This will strike the skin really hard and implant the pigment well. But if we use this on the eyes, it would tear them to pieces. So most PMU machines have around about a 2.8mm stroke length, which is great for eyebrows. But for a sharp needle and carbon combination, we are going to protect our client from swelling, trauma and migration if we use a machine with a much smaller stroke length. If we use a harder hitting machine, then the combination of the other 2 parts of the recipe can become a bit too risky. So this machine has just a 2.5mm stroke length and a soft hit, and it changed my eyeliner game massively, and it kept my clients so much more comfortable. And it's the Fleiss Slim. So the 3 ingredients for perfect liner are strong carbon pigment, a 3RL needle, and a soft hit machine. But how do we use these ingredients together to make sure it actually works? I'll show you. I'm going to start working on my clients after they've had numbing cream on for a few minutes. On the first pass, we do want to get pigment into the skin, but my primary focus is to open up the skin so that my secondary numbing is going to be effective. Then I can work quickly and effectively to pack in the colour. I'm going to use soft pendulum strokes, not anything too deep, because of the sharp needle. I work consistently up and down the area slowly, and I overlap each section by 50%. Now, the first pass is the most uncomfortable for your client, but if they're coping well, then get as much work done as you can, because this is when the skin is its least swollen. Wiping is just as aggravating as a needle, so keep wiping to a minimum and clean only after the first pass. It also gives time for the skin to suck the pigment in. So you can see what's actually implanted, use a Q-tip in some cooling solution like Skinful Beauty Pigment Seal to wipe off any colour that isn't. Then we numb with secondary numbing and get ready for pass 2. The secondary numbing will make your client so much more comfortable and relaxed. So now is the time to really work to get the colour really saturated. So working back and forth over the whole eye and constantly wiping will make the skin sore and swell fast. So work only on one area at a time and don't move on until you think it's fully saturated. Hold your nerve and just fill in one section at a time. After you've wiped the second pass, it should be finished, or just need some small areas of filling in. You'll know these because they'll look grey and not fully black. I finish my eyeliners in 2 to 3 passes and in under 20 minutes. But getting the pigment in fast is only half the battle. Making the eyeliner actually look good is something so many artists struggle with, and they don't realise that some minor tweaks to their work can turn them into masters. So to avoid the mistakes that are fucking up your eyeliner, go and watch this video next.